So next up, podcast listeners, we have an interesting story. This was on Tucker Carlson, but we're going to talk about this briefly. The balloon busted teacher. Yes, the balloon busted teacher, ladies and gentlemen. This is a true story. So there is a school board that actually thinks it's okay for a very large, big balloon busty trans teacher to stay in the classroom and teach teenage boys and girls. So get this. The normalization of radical LGBT agendas overtaking public school systems took center stage when the oversized prosthetic breasts of a transgender teacher grabbed international headlines and sparked widespread outrage. So, Chris, if you could put a picture of that up while we're talking about it. Sure. Because, ladies and gentlemen, these words that I just read don't do this picture justice. So there is a teacher of this individual at Oakville Trafalgar High School in Canada who regularly shows up to class wearing outrageously large fake breasts with noticeably offensive nipples prominently displayed under her very tight, clinging clothes, invading students' personal space and causing general tumult. There's only one thing, ladies and gentlemen. This teacher is a dude. Okay? The teacher is a dude. He teaches shop. So the teacher teaches shop at this school in Oakville, in Canada. He's a high school shop teacher. And he's decided to, I presume, wear a wig and identify as a woman, but that isn't enough for him. He has put on this massive prosthesis of breasts that, and Chris has put it up, the picture. You cannot believe it. Any normal human being would say this individual ought not be in the classroom. They ought to be in medical counseling. They ought to be in counseling, like, you know, for a psychiatrist or something. I'm not really sure, but certainly not in the high school. So you have a picture of this teacher who is teaching shop class and is using like what is that saw called? That saw that you bring down that cuts the wood. I always forget it. You know, it's like the table saw. Thank you. See, I failed shop class, by the way. So there's a table saw, and this teacher is showing the students, the teenage boys, because it's mostly, let's face it, teenage boys that take shop class. I'm not saying girls don't take shop class, but typically the only reason why girls would do it is to meet dudes. Usually back in high school, when I was in high school. Now it's primarily guys. Let's face it. Come on. Except for the teacher who's, well, of course, the teacher's a dude as well. So the teacher has these massive fake breasts and is showing, and the breasts are so huge, they're literally in the way of whatever the teacher does. And he's got the saw, the table saw, and showing the students how to use the table saw, but the breasts are in the way because they're fake and they're massive in a public high school in Canada. So Andy No tweets out, viral images of a trans teacher wearing oversized breasts that sag to the waist have been investigated. The tech teacher is Kayla Lemieux of Oakville Trafalgar High School in Ontario, Canada. The school stands by its teacher, and so does the school board. The school board thinks this is okay, and the school itself thinks this is okay. Now, you would think that this would be a joke, right? Back in maybe just a decade ago, if a student did this, a high school student, a minor, they would be sent home and they would be indeed told that, you know, this is inappropriate. Keep in mind the size of these things. It's clearly, you have to see this again to believe it. But the individual is a dude, okay, but calls himself Kayla Lemieux. Yeah, nice French name. Again, Andy, no. Some students have recorded images of the trans teacher at Oakville Trafalgar High School in Ontario, Canada, and put them on social media. And then this one picture, of course, again. And the video is of the teacher using the table saw and showing students how to cut wood, which is kind of funny. The dude cutting wood in shop class has breasts. So Halton District School Board members have reacted to the uproar by supporting the big-breasted trans teacher, claiming gender identity and gender expression are protected grounds under the Ontario Human Rights Code. That is the stance the school board is taking, and they are standing behind the teacher, said Chair Margot Shuttleworth. School staff was also in process of going through creating a safety plan to ensure the teacher's security as public outrage builds and protests were planned. So Maxime Bernier, this is a guy, okay? He tweets out, imagine a female teacher who now wants to be seen as a male if that same individual were appearing in class with a 12-inch dildo in her tight pants. Exactly. It would be equally inappropriate as what this guy is doing. You have to, ladies and gentlemen, see this picture. If you mistook Tucker Carlson, you can certainly look this up. You know, lady in Ontario, or dude, I should say, in Ontario, Canada, who wears massive prosthesis in front of high school students. Now, I'm trying to think of myself back in high school. And Chris, when you were back in high school, like if you saw this, wouldn't your immediate reaction in high school like be totally, first you would like go, ha, you know, you'd laugh your, you know what off. And the second thing would be, you'd be super creeped out by this individual.
I'd be creeped out for sure.
Yeah. I mean, because my first reaction is like, this can't be real, but yet it is. But as a high school student, you know, you're still, you're a minor, you're still a child and your brain is developing. And you're like, that is just really intimidating and weird, to the point that I want to get as far away from this individual as I possibly can, yet it's my teacher. You know, and how does the teacher grade people? You know, it's like
when I was growing up, you used to feel safe going to teachers with stuff, and I wouldn't feel safe going to that teacher, you know.
Well, imagine if you are in shop class and there is a written test. And you know how the teachers, when you would take written tests from time to time, would walk around the classroom. Yeah. And this teacher walks around the classroom and then leans over and looks at your test as you're taking it. I mean, there'd be a small problem with this prosthesis. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Okay. So look, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know where we are living. And yes, this is Canada, but this same crazy stuff, perhaps maybe not this extreme, but we do have drag queen happy hour, or whatever the heck it's called. Story time hour. Yeah, that's what it is. In elementary schools, many of them across the country. What is happening to our public school systems? What is happening to the point where people actually think that this is normal? I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, it's not normal. It's not appropriate. These are children. You're grooming them. You are sexualizing them. And honest to God, this individual, if anywhere, should be put in a mental institution. And so, by the way, should the school board. So should the principal. So should the vice principal. So should the fellow teachers for not speaking up. So should the parents. This is insane. And then in the Daily Caller, trans tape chest binders and packers, not sure what a packer is, the gender-affirming gear public schools are stocking up on. So apparently, K-12 school districts, in the U.S., by the way, are implementing gender-affirming closets to provide students with products to help change their gender identity. The items stocked in these gender-affirming closets include tucking tape. What is tucking tape?
I have no idea.
Chest binders.
I don't want to guess.
Chest binders. I can kind of figure out what that one is. And stand-to-pee devices.
Is tucking tape for male genitals, maybe?
A stand-to-pee device?
Like,
An aspect of concern is that children see the peers getting special treatment and access to these closets. And that leads to developing resentment towards students with actual gender dysphoria, which could then lead to harassment and bullying, and then contribute to the social contagion we are now seeing among our nation's children. So, folks, imagine for a moment that you live in a community and you live in a subdivision and your, let's say, 12-year-old child, 13-year-old child goes over to a neighbor's house, and the neighbor has a gender-affirming closet and encourages you to use the tucking tape, chest binders, and stand-to-pee devices, among other things. That neighbor, of course, would immediately be arrested, and rightly so. Yet this is allowed in public education today, and it is no prosecutors, no like state's attorneys are prosecuting the school boards and or the individuals who are making this possible. This doesn't belong in the public school system. Of course not. But everybody knows this. Yet no one seems to have the courage to stop it. Namely, as I said, a good state attorney would shut this stuff. He would arrest the individuals immediately. Once again, your kid goes over in the subdivision, the neighbor's house, and the adults in that house, or a adult in that house, allows your child access to these same things that are in the closet. That individual clearly is going to get arrested, but yet it's okay in the public school system. Come on. That's crazy stuff. Who on earth ever thought this was okay? And how did we ever get to this point? Well, we got to this point because conservatives, independents, and thinking Democrats, and there are a good amount of Democrats who clearly realize this is insane. They have been quiet for far too long because they are fearful, which is why people are submerged voters, right? There are submerged voters in the United States. Namely, they don't want to tell pollsters or their neighbors or their friends. They don't want to tell anyone what they're really thinking because they're terrified of being canceled. They're terrified of losing their job. They're terrified of losing their reputation. They're terrified of not being invited to the right parties, which is how this all happened. We must speak out, ladies and gentlemen. We must speak loudly this election. We must end this craziness. Please, let's end this craziness in public school systems.